for this union and the specifics around her race, there was an opportunity, many opportunities, for my family to show some public support.
What happens when a prince walks away from the palace but keeps the crown in his name? Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's royal exit shook the world, but the story isn't over. Now the British establishment is fighting back, and a powerful petition could strip Harry of every remaining title. Is this accountability or revenge? There's been a growing conversation in the UK and abroad about whether Prince Harry and Meghan Markle should keep their royal titles. What once seemed like a distant discussion among royal commentators has now entered more formal territory, with members of the British establishment getting involved. According to recent reports from the New York Post and several UK outlets, this issue has gone beyond opinion columns and talk shows. A petition has now been introduced in the House of Lords, aiming to officially remove all remaining royal titles from Prince Harry. The timing of this renewed pressure hasn't gone unnoticed. It closely follows a recent BBC interview with Prince Harry that aired just hours after he lost an appeal regarding taxpayer-funded security during his visits to the UK. The public reaction was swift, and for many, indicative of a deeper frustration that's been building for years. For some, this interview felt tone-deaf, given the ongoing discussions around public spending, the role of the monarchy, and the responsibilities tied to royal privilege. While petitions are not rare in British politics, the fact that this one is gaining traction within the House of Lords signals that it's being taken seriously at a governmental level. It's not just social media chatter anymore. A number of peers in the upper chamber have expressed concern over the disconnect between Harry's current lifestyle and the responsibilities typically expected of someone holding royal titles. What's being proposed is more than symbolic. If successful, it would strip Harry of his title as Duke of Sussex, along with any remaining formal references to His Royal Highness. This wouldn't be the first time such changes have been made, but it would be one of the most high-profile moves of its kind in recent royal history. To understand why this is happening now, it's important to look at the broader context. Prince Harry and Meghan made international headlines in 2020 when they announced they were stepping back from royal duties. The couple moved to California and began building their own public identity, separate from the monarchy. Since then, they've signed major media deals, launched a podcast, released a Netflix documentary series, and given multiple high-profile interviews. Supporters of the couple say they've brought much-needed transparency and humanity to an institution often seen as closed off and outdated. They've spoken openly about mental health, racism, and the challenges of being part of the royal family. Critics, on the other hand, argue that they've profited from their royal connection, while also criticizing the very institution that gave them their titles. This is where the current push to remove their titles comes in. The argument from many in Parliament and beyond is that you can't have it both ways. If you choose to leave the official role, live independently, and speak publicly about internal matters, then the formal status that comes with those roles should also be left behind. It's worth noting that the British royal system has long been associated with service and tradition. Titles have historically come with the expectation of duty, discretion, and representation of the crown. By distancing themselves from royal life while continuing to use their titles in various ways, Harry and Meghan are seen by some as blurring the lines between public service and private enterprise. Public sentiment is also playing a major role in this shift. Many Britons feel that the couple's continued use of royal titles is inappropriate, particularly given the nature of their recent public statements. The tension became even more noticeable following the release of Harry's memoir, Spare, which included deeply personal stories and criticism of several senior royals. While some readers saw the book as an honest and emotional account of his experiences, others believed it crossed a line, revealing too much about private family matters. The interview circuit that followed, as well as the Netflix series, only intensified the debate. The push to strip titles is not without its opponents. Some believe this move would be too harsh and potentially escalate tensions further within the royal family. After all, Harry is still the son of the king. There's an emotional and historical weight to that connection, and removing his titles wouldn't change his place in the royal lineage. But for those backing the petition, it's about principle. If royal titles are to mean anything in the modern age, they argue, they must be linked to responsibility and conduct. Holding on to a title while openly criticizing the institution it represents sends a confusing message to the public. It's also about setting a precedent. The monarchy, like many long-standing institutions, is facing pressure to evolve. In a world where transparency and accountability are increasingly demanded from public figures, the expectations placed on royalty have shifted. Simply being born into a role is no longer seen as enough. Many feel that active contribution and service must accompany any formal recognition. The question, then, is what kind of monarchy the UK wants in the 21st century. One that holds on to tradition at all costs, or one that adapts to changing public expectations. Stripping titles from a senior royal, particularly one who was once widely admired, would certainly be a bold move. But for those pushing the petition, it's a necessary step toward aligning the monarchy's image with its reality. It's important to clarify that removing titles isn't an instant or easy process. It involves legal and constitutional steps, and would likely require discussions not just within the House of Lords, but also with the monarchy itself. The king would have to be involved in any final decision. That means this process, if it goes forward, could take time. But the very act of beginning it sends a message that the status quo is no longer acceptable for some. At the same time, this development is being watched closely by other royal households around Europe. Several monarchies have recently slimmed down their structures, removing titles or reducing the number of working royals. There's a wider trend toward more streamlined, modern royal families that focus on service over status. In that context, the UK's royal family is under similar scrutiny. Ultimately, the situation with Harry and Meghan touches on deeper questions about identity, loyalty, and the purpose of royalty in modern society. It's not just about names or titles. It's about what those things represent. As the House of Lords considers its next steps, the world is watching to see whether this will be a turning point or just another moment in the ongoing evolution of the British monarchy. The monarchy is known for its silence. For decades, never complain, never explain was more than just a motto. It was the way the institution operated. Royals rarely spoke out about personal matters. Issues were handled behind closed doors. Public image was carefully managed, often at the expense of transparency. In that context, Harry and Meghan's decision to go public with their grievances marked a major shift. Their interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2021 was the first major moment where this clash between old and new was fully visible. The couple spoke about racism, mental health struggles, and a lack of support from the royal household. Meghan revealed that at one point she felt so isolated and hopeless that she considered ending her life. Harry spoke about feeling trapped in a system he didn't fully understand until he stepped away from it. The interview wasn't just emotional, it was explosive. It set off global headlines and forced a rare response from Buckingham Palace, which stated that the issues raised were concerning and would be addressed privately. Even that brief statement was a departure from how the palace usually responds to controversy. It was a sign of how serious the situation had become. What followed was a string of projects that further defined the couple's narrative. They signed deals with Netflix and Spotify. They launched their Archewell Foundation and began sharing their personal story through documentaries, podcasts, and books. One of the most significant moments was the release of Harry's memoir, Spare, in which he detailed everything from his grief over Princess Diana's death to conflicts with his brother William and father King Charles. For some, these revelations were a much-needed dose of honesty. For others, they crossed a line. The book, along with the couple's Netflix series, was seen by critics as self-serving and damaging to the royal brand. While Harry and Meghan said they wanted to control their story, detractors argued they were doing so at the expense of an institution that traditionally values discretion and unity. This tension, between openness and loyalty, between freedom and responsibility, is at the heart of the current debate about royal titles. Titles are more than just words. They carry historical weight, public expectation, and symbolic meaning. When Harry and Meghan left their roles as working royals, they agreed to no longer use His and Her Royal Highness in any official capacity. However, they retained their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles, which they still use publicly. This continued use has frustrated some within the UK, especially as the couple's projects have often included criticism of the monarchy. From a traditional point of view, it creates a conflict. How can someone critique an institution while still benefiting from the prestige associated with it? That question has become even more pressing as media and public scrutiny have intensified. Every public appearance, podcast episode, or interview is examined for signs of contradiction or hypocrisy. The couple's critics argue that they are using their titles to lend credibility and brand recognition to their work, while also distancing themselves from the obligations those titles typically imply. At the same time, the world has changed dramatically. The rise of social media and digital platforms has altered how public figures communicate. For generations, royals were shaped by press coverage in newspapers and on television. Today, they can speak directly to millions through personal channels. This has given Harry and Meghan a unique kind of power, one that previous royals never had. In a world where storytelling is currency, Harry and Meghan's story has become one of the most powerful. Whether you agree with their choices or not, it's hard to ignore the influence they wield. Their version of events has reached audiences far beyond the UK. For many people around the world, especially younger generations, they represent a modern, independent approach to royalty, one that questions outdated systems and prioritizes personal well-being. But that approach also creates challenges. The monarchy is built on a foundation of service, continuity, and tradition. Its legitimacy comes from a combination of history, public duty, and symbolic presence. When someone steps away from that role but continues to use its titles and influence, it raises questions about the boundaries between personal freedom and institutional responsibility. That's why some members of Parliament, as well as a number of public figures and royal commentators, have started to speak out more directly. They argue that keeping titles while living as private citizens in another country sends the wrong message. It suggests that you can walk away from the responsibilities of being royal while holding on to the benefits. Others have pointed out that this isn't about punishing Harry and Meghan. It's about defining what royal status means in a modern world. If the monarchy is to remain relevant, its values need to be clear and consistent. Titles, they argue, should reflect active service and commitment to the crown, not just heritage. This conversation isn't happening in a vacuum. Around Europe, several royal families have already made moves to slim down their households. In Sweden, King Carl XVI Gustaf removed royal status from several of his grandchildren to allow them more freedom and reduce the monarchy's public responsibilities. In Denmark, Queen Margrethe made a similar decision, sparking debate but also earning respect for addressing modern expectations. The British monarchy is facing its own version of this shift. With King Charles now on the throne, there's been talk of a slimmed-down monarchy focused on fewer working royals who are actively engaged in public service. Against that backdrop, Harry and Meghan's continued use of their titles, while living and working independently, appears increasingly out of step with the direction the institution is trying to take. Of course, there's also a human side to this story. Harry has often spoken about the emotional weight of royal life and the trauma he's carried since losing his mother. His desire to protect his wife and children from what he calls the cycle of pain in the royal system is deeply personal. Meghan, for her part, has described how unprepared she was for the scrutiny that came with royal life, and how little support she received during her most difficult moments. Those experiences are real and deserve empathy. But the broader question is not just about their pain. It's about the public role they once held and the choices they've made since stepping away from it. When a member of the royal family chooses to speak out, criticize, and redefine themselves, it inevitably affects how the institution is perceived. That's why the House of Lords petition is about more than just Harry. It's about setting a precedent for what modern royalty should look like. It's about drawing a line between personal branding and public service. And it's about ensuring that the values of the monarchy, whatever they are in this new era, are reflected in those who carry its titles. The fallout didn't happen overnight. In fact, in the beginning, the couple was widely popular. Harry had long been seen as the relatable royal, the soldier prince who walked behind his mother's coffin, the one who brought humor and humility to royal engagements, and who connected with the public in a way that felt genuine. Meghan was charismatic and intelligent, and her arrival on the royal scene was welcomed by many as a sign that the monarchy was evolving with the times. But the honeymoon period didn't last. The British press began covering the couple relentlessly. Some of it was the usual tabloid coverage that follows any royal, but much of it turned negative very quickly. Stories ranged from trivial matters like which flowers were used at their wedding to more serious accusations of staff mistreatment and protocol breaches. Meghan, in particular, faced intense media scrutiny, and many commentators and academics pointed out that some of the coverage had racial undertones. The couple cited this as one of the key reasons they felt compelled to leave the UK. Even so, the way they chose to tell their story once they stepped back from royal duties became a major point of contention. Rather than quietly moving into private life, Harry and Meghan began a media rollout that included interviews, documentaries, and a high-profile book release. Their critics argue that they didn't step away from the spotlight. They simply took control of it. The Oprah interview in 2021 was a turning point. In it, Meghan made serious allegations, including claims that a senior royal questioned the potential skin color of their unborn child and that the institution offered no real support when she struggled with her mental health. Harry backed her up on all fronts, speaking about his estrangement from his family and the pressures he faced growing up royal. The interview was watched by millions and sparked global reactions, some sympathetic, others deeply critical. At first, the public was gripped by their story. Many expressed outrage and concern over what the couple described. But as time passed, the mood began to shift. Some started to question whether the couple was genuinely trying to heal, or if they were simply exploiting their royal connection for personal and financial gain. Their deals with major entertainment platforms like Netflix and Spotify brought in millions, raising eyebrows and fueling accusations that they were monetizing the very institution they had publicly criticized. Then came the documentary series on Netflix. It provided personal footage, behind-the-scenes clips, and more direct commentary from both Harry and Meghan. They spoke about the challenges they faced, the breakdown in relationships, and their decision to start over in California. But again, the response was split. Supporters praised their openness. Critics accused them of dragging the royal family through the mud while profiting from the drama. And then there was Spare. Harry's memoir, released in early 2023, went further than many expected. He described physical altercations with Prince William, strained conversations with his father, and unresolved trauma stemming from his mother's death. No one in the family was left untouched. Even Queen Camilla, long seen as a sensitive figure in the royal family, was portrayed in unflattering terms. The book gave unprecedented insight into royal life, but at a cost. Some readers found the book powerful and emotional, while others saw it as an act of public betrayal. For those who value the privacy and dignity traditionally associated with the monarchy, Spare represented a clear break from royal convention. And for many in the British public, it was the moment Harry shifted from being the spare with a kind heart to someone who had gone too far. This growing divide in public opinion hasn't just impacted Harry. Meghan has been at the center of the storm from the beginning. Depending on whom you ask, she's either the woman who helped Harry find his voice or the person who encouraged him to sever ties with his family. Her role in shaping the couple's public image has made her a polarizing figure, especially in the UK. Some media outlets and critics portray her as manipulative, while her defenders see her as a victim of systemic injustice and media bias. Whatever one's personal view, there's no denying the outcome. Fractured royal relationships, a monarchy under pressure, and a significant portion of the public turning cold. What once seemed like a fresh start has become a source of ongoing controversy. At the heart of this shift is the perception that Harry and Meghan have chosen to share their story in a way that repeatedly damages the royal family's reputation while still benefiting from the status those royal ties provide. Even those sympathetic to their situation have begun asking tough questions. Are they exposing the truth, or are they exploiting the drama? Is this about accountability, or is it about vengeance? In the UK especially, where respect for the monarchy remains deeply embedded in national identity, the backlash has been more pronounced. The sense that Harry and Meghan have gone too far is reflected in polls, media commentary, and political discourse. The royal family, meanwhile, has largely remained silent. Buckingham Palace's decision not to engage publicly with the couple's claims has helped maintain the appearance of dignity and stability. But that silence has come with consequences. Without a direct response, the public has been left to form opinions based on only one side of the story. And for some, the lack of a counter-narrative has made the allegations feel even more damning. The damage, many say, is already done. Whether or not the petition to remove Harry's title succeeds, it's clear that the royal family's public image has taken a hit. Trust has been eroded. The sense of unity that once defined the royal household is gone, or at least no longer visible. And Harry, once one of the most beloved members of the family, is now at the center of a storm unlike anything the monarchy has faced in recent memory. It's not just about titles anymore. It's about how Harry has used his platform since leaving royal duties. It's about the choices he's made, what to reveal, what to protect, and how to present himself to the world. The British establishment, including the House of Lords, appears ready to draw a line. For them, this isn't about revenge. It's about redefining the boundaries of what it means to be royal in a media-driven age. Harry and Meghan's defenders say they were forced out, not that they left voluntarily. They argue that the couple tried to work within the system only to be shut out and mistreated. But critics believe that protection doesn't look like public criticism, and that healing doesn't come through tell-all interviews and media deals. The petition introduced in the House of Lords to strip Harry of his remaining royal titles marks a significant moment. Not because it guarantees any outcome. Removing titles is a long, complicated process that involves legal steps, parliamentary discussions, and the approval of the monarch, but because of what it represents. It's a message, loud and clear, from parts of the establishment that the monarchy can no longer afford to be passive when its traditions and credibility are under scrutiny. For many years, the British royal family has relied on continuity. The strength of the monarchy wasn't in its adaptability, but in its consistency. That's how it survived wars, political upheaval, and social change. But the world is different now. Institutions are being questioned in ways they haven't been before. People want transparency, accountability, and authenticity from their leaders, even symbolic ones. And for the royal family, that means it can no longer ignore what its titles and honors represent in the modern age. At the core of this debate is the idea of public service. Royal titles aren't just ceremonial. They carry expectations. Representing the crown, attending official functions, supporting charities, and upholding a certain standard of conduct. The critics of Harry and Meghan argue that you can't walk away from those responsibilities and still benefit from the association. Whether it's through brand deals, speaking engagements, or simply the influence that comes from being called a duke or duchess, titles come with power. And power without responsibility raises difficult questions. Some people still believe this is a personal vendetta, that the House of Lords is reacting emotionally to being criticized, that Harry and Meghan have been unfairly targeted by the media and are simply defending themselves. But even those who sympathize with the couple's early struggles are beginning to admit that this moment goes beyond hurt feelings or private drama. It's become a matter of principle. What does it mean to be royal today? And who gets to hold that title? In many ways, this is a moment of reckoning not just for Harry and Meghan, but for the monarchy as a whole. Across Europe, other royal families have been making similar decisions. In Denmark, for example, Queen Margrethe made the controversial move to strip several of her grandchildren of their princely titles in 2022. Her stated goal was to allow them to live more normal lives while helping to streamline the monarchy. In Sweden, the king removed royal status from some of his grandchildren for similar reasons. These actions were met with mixed reactions, but were also seen as pragmatic steps toward modernizing these institutions. The British monarchy, often slower to change, is now facing similar pressure. The conversation around Harry and Meghan is forcing it to define what kind of institution it wants to be. Is it one that clings to the idea that birthright alone is enough to hold a title, or one that links status to ongoing commitment and service? As the public watches, the monarchy's silence on the issue becomes part of the message. Choosing not to act is, in itself, a choice. And that brings us back to Prince Harry. Whatever his intentions, it's clear that his departure from the royal family and the way he has spoken about it have caused deep and lasting impact. His decision to be open about private matters, to share his experiences of trauma, frustration, and perceived injustice, has brought attention to some real and valid concerns. But it's also come at a price. Harry's image has changed dramatically. Once the charming, relatable royal with a clear sense of duty, he is now seen by many as someone who walked away from tradition but didn't let go of the benefits that came with it. His memoir, while emotionally raw, also included details that many felt should have remained private. Stories about his brother, his father, even personal memories of his late mother. Instead of healing family divisions, many believe it deepened them. What's also become clear is that the decision to remove titles isn't about erasing Harry from history. No petition can do that. He will always be the son of King Charles, the younger brother of the future king, and a part of the story of the modern monarchy. This is about boundaries. It's about making a distinction between being a royal in name and being a royal in practice. Meghan's role in all of this can't be ignored either. Although she isn't the focus of the petition, her influence has been central to the couple's public journey. From the beginning, she brought a different energy to the royal family, outspoken, independent, and media-savvy. That same energy helped shape the Sussex brand, which has become both widely admired and widely criticized. Meghan has been praised for speaking up about mental health and race, but she has also been accused of fueling the divide between the couple and the royal household. Regardless of opinion, there's no question that the brand built around Harry and Meghan has challenged the monarchy to examine how it operates in a 24/7 media environment. In some ways, they've forced the institution to confront its own relevance, but they've also exposed its vulnerabilities. Now, with a petition in place and public pressure mounting, the royal family faces a decision point. If the monarchy chooses to formally remove Harry's titles, it sets a precedent that titles must be earned and maintained through conduct. If it does nothing, it risks appearing indifferent to growing concerns about fairness and accountability. The message is already resonating far beyond the UK. Other royal families, political leaders, and the global public are watching. If someone as high-profile as Prince Harry can lose his titles, it will redefine the expectations for all royals going forward. It will send a signal that titles are not just ceremonial, they're conditional. Whatever happens next, the fallout has changed the landscape of modern royalty. What began as a story about personal freedom has evolved into a much broader conversation about power, image, and responsibility. Harry and Meghan may have hoped to write a new chapter in royal history, but it turns out that their story has rewritten the rules entirely. And that brings us to the future. For Prince Harry, the road ahead is uncertain. He has carved out a new identity, separate from the monarchy, but still tied to it by name, history, and attention. Whether he will fight to keep his titles or quietly let them go remains to be seen. What is certain is that the institution he once belonged to is moving on. Slowly, quietly, but deliberately. If the door to the monarchy is closing behind him, it's doing so with intention. The message from the establishment is that loyalty is not just about blood, It's about choices. And once you choose to walk away, the crown doesn't follow you. It stays behind. For the monarchy, this is more than just a response to one individual. It's about defining what it stands for in an era where nothing is above scrutiny, not even the oldest royal family in the world. And for all the uncertainty, one thing is clear. This moment will shape how royalty is viewed for generations to come.